Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Michelle Morris from Consolidated Planning Group. We have got a fantastic webinar for you today about how to more effectively parent your neurodiverse child. We have Dr. Garcia, we've got Michaela Brown here with us today. They are going to be presenting some great information about different behavior and different parenting techniques. First, I just want to give you a short introduction to Consolidated Planning Group and, of course, how this webinar is going to run today. So first of all, I want to let you know that we do record all of the webinars that we do. After the webinar is finished, you will receive an email that includes a link to our YouTube channel where this webinar will live. And then we also send you the slides for the webinar. So you'll receive that later on today at whatever email address you registered for. If you don't, feel free to reach out to us and we will get you that information. I've put my email address, my phone number, and our website and our YouTube channel in the chat box. So you have all the contact information for Consolidated Planning Group. The other thing I would like to let you know is that because we're in webinar mode today, unfortunately, we cannot see or hear you. So if you would just put any comments or questions that you have in the chat box, I'm going to be monitoring that and making sure that we get all of those questions answered for you as we go through the presentation today. So just real quick, why should you even listen to what we have to say? Well, Consolidated Planning Group, we've been in business for 30 years doing financial services. We also do special needs planning. So anything that you can think of that any traditional financial advisor would do for you, we would do that, but we focus on making sure that your loved one who has some kind of disability or need is going to be taken care of in the future, and that you do all those little things that you need to for them and for their care, not just your own retirement and income goals and needs. So we are members of the Special Needs Planning Academy. We are chartered special needs consultants through the American College of Financial Services, and we're nationally certified Social Security advisors. Almost all of the clients that we work with have a child or an individual in their life with some kind of developmental or intellectual disability. So that's truly what we do day in and day out. And we know all of those little tips and nuances. Even though we're based in the Houston area, we work all across the United States. So anywhere that you know somebody who might benefit from our services, you can send them to us and we would be happy to have a chat. So families come to us when they want help with things like, how do I protect my family if something goes wrong? Like, what if I die early or become disabled and I can't earn money for my family anymore, or I can't be here to care for my children? Lifetime care needs. Your child is going to need help for the rest of their lifetime, not just the rest of your lifetime. So how can you set money aside, and how much do you need to set aside to take care of your children? We can help you figure that out. We do a lot of work with transition planning, looking at different benefits at different time periods in your loved one's life and making sure that everything is set up for them correctly so that they won't lose those important benefits that they can get. ABLE accounts, and we can sign you up for an ABLE account. We can help you understand how they work, how to use your ABLE account versus maybe your special needs trust, and how to make sure that you keep less than $2,000 in your loved one's account so that they won't miss out on SSI or Medicaid services. And then finally, advocacy and education. The other day, I accidentally said education, but really, that's what we're here for. We're here to advocate for you and to educate you on these kinds of topics. Out of the entire United States, there are over 263,000 financial advisors. But out of those 263,000 financial advisors, fewer than 200, not 200,000, just 200 period, focus on special needs planning the way that we do. That's less than 0.1% of all the financial advisors in the United States who truly get these nuanced conversations and can help you really understand what you need to do. So a few bits of advice before I turn this webinar over. I know it keeps our families awake thinking about who is going to care for my loved one when I can't do it anymore. Well, the key to that question and what's going to help you sleep better at night is to think about planning now. The earlier the better when it comes to planning for the future. You can have a longer runway to make more adjustments and small incremental changes that will have a larger effect in the long term. Now, if you are already a little bit later in life and you have a shorter runway, no worries, we can still help you, definitely. It just might mean that things are going to happen a little bit quicker, and but we will help you as much as we can to get those dreams and goals for your future to come true. Think about what's going to happen after high school. There are great vocational options, residential options, and educational options for your loved one where they will be able to succeed in whatever that looks like for them. Consider touring these programs early. There could be wait lists, and we would hate for you to find the perfect situation or program for your family and then find out that you have to wait 10 years to take part in that. So tour those opportunities, get a feel for them, and just be very careful when sometimes parents assume that a sibling is going to just be able to step in and take care of their loved one in the future. But what we see from our perspective is that sometimes that sibling has a sense of obligation towards their loved one. And that's not really what you want. Maybe they're willing now as children, oh, of course I'll take care of my sibling. But when the time comes and push comes to shove, they realize that it might be a little bit more than they thought. And they have their own life and their own family and their own careers, and it could be a lot harder than they were thinking it would be. And on the opposite side, here's your loved one with their sibling that has always been a source of comfort, a source of fun, a partner in crime. And now all of a sudden, this loved sibling, this best friend, is trying to step into more of a parental or authority figure over them, and they might feel some resentment about that as well. So think long and hard before you decide that a sibling is going to be the best way to go. Okay, that's all the advice we have for you for right now. Now, Consolidated Planning Group, we are the financial piece. We are the financial advisors who focus on special needs families. You can make a free consultation appointment with us, and I'll tell you at the end of this webinar how to set that up, or you can call or email me directly, and I'd be happy to sign you up for your free initial consultation. It's over Zoom, very low key, and our main goal is to answer your questions and then learn a little bit about you and see if our business model works for you. So please do set up your free consultation with us after this webinar. And without any more blabbing from me, I will step aside and let Michaela and Amy take over. Thank you both so much for being here today.
Yes, thank you so much, Michelle, for having us. So my name is Dr. Amy Garcia. I'm a licensed psychologist and assistant professor at the University of Texas Health Science Center at Houston, and I specialize in the assessment of autism for people of all ages. With me today, I have Miss Michaela Brown. She's a doctoral psychology intern at UT Health, and she has a wealth of experience and knowledge about behavior management strategies for neurodivergent children. And next year, she'll actually be at Texas Children's Hospital, completing a postdoctoral fellowship there. So I'm super excited to have her here as well. And today, so I'm going a little out of order. Today, we're going to be talking about effective parenting techniques for your neurodivergent child. And really this neurodiversity affirming approach, which helps celebrate strengths, understand difficulties, and implement strategies.
I just want to make sure that everybody has a second to see your email address there so that after this is over, they can hopefully contact you. Of course, you will receive these slides, so you'll be able to reach out to her. You'll have that info.
Yes, thank you. So I recognize we are in webinar mode, so you can't really turn your cameras on, but anytime I give a presentation, I like to be very direct in social expectations about webinars and things. And I know I really appreciate being able to participate in these kinds of uh, situations, events. So please, please, please ask questions. There is no silly question. Um, this is a safe space. So, we may be talking about some difficult things, right? Maybe some difficulties that you're having with your child or children. And I really appreciate your honesty and vulnerability in bringing these. I hope you cannot hear the leaf blowing outside of my window, but if you can, let me know. And then just as a disclaimer, this is for educational purposes only. Anything that I say is not establishing a psychologist-client relationship. Okay, so before I talk about the meat and potatoes, what we're talking about today, I always like to introduce myself a little bit more and kind of what led me to work with this population. So I have been a part of this community ever since I was born, actually. So my older sister, she's 18 months older than me to the day, actually, was diagnosed with PDD-NOS in the mid 1990s. So that was pervasive developmental disorder not otherwise specified, which is essentially autism. And so, growing up, I was kind of accidentally a social skills trainer for her. I know I forced her to eat ice cream for the first time. So I was also a feeding therapist. But, having that personal experience with autism is really what led me to be in the position I am now. So, like I said, I do autism assessment for people of all ages and all levels of functioning. So I see people as young as 2 all the way up to 60 plus. And so having this personal experience with autism really keeps me inspired and really passionate about the work I do. So I recognize many of you have probably been in this community for a long time as well. But I always like to go over kind of what autism is and how I describe it, just so we're kind of all on the same page, right? Autism is a neurodevelopmental difference. So that means your brain has just developed differently. There are some, things that may be associated with an elevated likelihood of having autism, right? Things like maybe preterm birth or a birth injury or genetic components, right? But there is no one cause of autism. And I always tell parents, it's nothing that you did or didn't do that caused your children to have autism. It's just the way their brains have developed. And we need all types of brains to make the world go round. We know that, autism is increasing. It's now 1 in 36 US children. This may be due to a true rise in autism, but our assessment methods of autism have just only continued to improve. We're continuing to understand what autism is and what it looks like in people of all ages and people of all, backgrounds, things like that. But autism can be reliably diagnosed by around 2 years of age. Okay. So like I said, we all know we probably know what autism is, but just in case, the way I describe autism, it's it's a different way of developing that impacts 2 major areas. So these are some of the things that may come up as difficulties that may need help being managed, or just better understood. So the first area that autism impacts is just social communication and interaction. So we're looking at differences in, ways to communicate, right? So it may be difficult to have a back and forth conversation with an individual with autism because there's definitely a neurodivergent way of communicating and a neurotypical way of communicating, right? Individuals with autism may have differences in nonverbal communication. So, right, if you're in a situation where you need them to look at you, you may have to remind them, and that may be really uncomfortable for them. We also see just differences in understanding and maintaining relationships. So maintaining friendships can be difficult for individuals on the autism spectrum, but we do know that autistic friendships have some pretty unique qualities that are marked by actually more social anxiety and feeling the need to fit in. And autism also just kind of impacts the way that you process the world around you, right? So having hyperfixations or areas of intense interest. I always say it's not a bad thing to have interests. It's not a bad thing to have hobbies, and it's not a bad thing to like them a lot. But when they get in the way of your ability to do schoolwork or chores or have social obligations, that's when it can be a problem, right? We also see just different ways of moving your body, so whole body rocking or flapping, your hands, things like that. Insistence on sameness. So this can also be where we see parents and children butting heads, right? Having difficulties with changes in routine or needing things to be a certain way or certain order, things like that. And we also see sensory differences. So sensory sensitivities, the world can be loud and bright, right? So it can be really like disturbing and dysregulating for individuals on the autism spectrum, which can also get in the way of their ability to communicate and interact, or um, you know, uh, behave in a certain way, right? Um, so I'm curious. Feel free to put this in the chat. I guess, how do you define autism? Have you had this conversation with your child about what autism is and what it means for you and will or means for them? So I'll give it a few seconds
Oh,
to
those
see.
chat answers will come rolling in. How do you define autism, everybody? What is it in your life? We'll go on, but I'm sure those will start coming through.
Great. Okay. And so this idea of neurodiversity is kind of the way that I've always seen autism because it's just always been a part of my life. Having a neurodivergent sibling and parent, um, it's always been a part of my life. So this idea of neurodiversity, the term was first coined by Judy Singer in the 1990s. So she actually published a thesis kind of on her experience um, as someone in the middle of three generations of women somewhere on the autism spectrum and on membership of her early online autistic e-groups. But there's a recent article that came out that actually this idea has been developed collectively by autistic activists more recently. And so, Melody, I see in the chat, my son is 7 with ASD. We've not discussed it with him. Yes. That's also that could be another whole topic on a
Yeah, I
webinar,
was
right?
actually kind of interested in seeing that. I know Melody lives here in the same neighborhood that I do. Uh,
Oh,
so I saw her name pop up and I was thinking, oh, yay, there's Melody.
yeah.
But I am curious about that, how families talk with their children about that and at what age that's an appropriate discussion. Maybe you can give some insight into that late now or
Yeah.
later or whatever.
Yeah, we can do it now. Otherwise, I may forget. So, super, yeah, super interesting topic. And I'm not familiar with like the research on it, whether there's an age right, because I'm sure you've heard this as well. When you've met one person with autism, you've only met one person with autism, and
Mhm.
this is very it's a deep kind of discussion to have, right? It's different from communicating to your child like you have diabetes, right? This is inherently a different way that your brain has developed that impacts everything around you, the way you process, the way you communicate with people. Um, yeah, so it depends on the level of functioning, right? Or level of support needs, I would say. So for a lot of folks I see like level 1 autism, so requiring support. Um, and with teenagers, if they are an active part of the evaluation process, they're seeking this evaluation out. I have that conversation with the parent and the teenager or the client pretty much then and there. But I try to make sure that everyone is an active part of the conversation because sometimes parents don't want their kids to know. And I don't like to be the type of psychologist that's like, well, you should do this and you should, because it's really a very personal thing to discuss. It's almost cultural too, right? So I think it can be helpful once they reach adulthood because then they may find other people who are like them. They may find other autistic folks, right? Um, and a lot of the people I see, right, they have long-standing difficulties in maintaining friendships. And I always say, you need to find your people. So if they have a name for it of like, oh, I am autistic or I have autism, if I find other people like me, um, we can have that discussion. So if you are curious about that or wanting to workshop that individually, feel free to shoot me an email. always happy to chat about that. But the
And maybe that
way,
would be a great topic for another
yeah, let's do
webinar in
that.
the future is
Yeah, that'd be
uh,
great.
something about how do we do that? How do we discuss our child's differences with them in a way that is supportive and open-minded to them and helpful and not, the way that we usually
Stigmatizing.
have to by yelling at them and fighting and having arguments and disagreements.
Exactly. Yeah. So I like the other comments in the chat about, your brain is developed differently. Some people feel, experience, understand things differently. And so the way I described autism in the last couple slides is how I describe it to my clients. And I truly say and truly believe that we need all types of brains to make the world go around, without minimizing the true difficulties that you're experiencing, right? Autism in this neurodiversity framework is just a naturally occurring variant in human neurology, right? So just like that, we have biodiversity, there's lots of like rich plant life and things like that, right? We really do need all types of brains to make the world go round. And that's what I believe. So, if you are curious about having that conversation with your child, describing it in that way of, it's just a different way of developing, right? Like, you've communicated that you do feel different from others. And let me tell you, I know what it is, and I know there are lots of other people like you. It's not, um, it's not you're not a bad kid, there's nothing really wrong with you. It's just your brain is developed differently, and this is the word for it, autism. So that's kind of the different things, different scripts I would use and pull from. Great discussion. Thank you. And feel free to keep asking questions or making comments throughout as well. So when we talk about autism in this lens, it's important to talk about this idea of something called camouflaging. So I'm not sure if any of you have heard this or heard of this, but it's this idea of needing to mask our past in social situations. And that can look like sitting on your hands so you don't engage in, subtle repetitive hand and finger movements. It may be stopping yourself from talking about your interests, your intense interests. It may look like watching other people to see, how are they reacting? How are other people responding to them? Okay, I need to act like them. I had a client who someone described them as a character from Sex and the City. So then they watch Sex and the City to watch that character and see like how to act in social situations. And camouflaging and masking, the reason why folks on the autism spectrum or other neurodivergent conditions, right, they make camouflage in order to gain friendships, right? It's an adaptive strategy. It's something that is unfortunately necessary right now because we live in a very neurotypical heavy world, right? People make camouflage to avoid punishment, right? So to avoid being teased or bullied. But we know that camouflaging can come at a pretty significant cost. There's research to suggest that camouflaging or masking autistic traits can lead to physical exhaustion or even extreme anxiety. So I see a lot of the girls and women, they may be masking and camouflaging their whole day at school. And then when they come home, it's just like, oh, I have to literally unmask. And that's when you may see, emotion dysregulation problems at home, right? Because they've spent all of their brain power at school.
Mhm.
And now it's just when I come at home. So it's a good and bad thing because that means they feel safe with you. But then when you are their safe person, you may see more, unpleasant behaviors. Okay. And the reason why I bring the double empathy problem up is because it's this idea that it's not only on the autistic person that they need to change. It's this idea that their autistic people have difficulties understanding non-autistic people, but we also have problems understanding autistic people. So we need to be able to understand autism better, understand the way they communicate and interact with people better, in order to avoid communication breakdowns. Um, so that's the short answer on that. And so a lot of times when we're talking about autism or evaluating, especially evaluating for autism or even in therapy, right, we're trying to figure out what is wrong, what are your concerns, what needs to be fixed, right? But I'm curious, I guess, what are some of the strengths of your children? What are some of the strengths of autism that you've noticed? I know for me, as you're typing and thinking, um, I see really good pattern recognition, right? A lot of individuals on the autism spectrum are really good at identifying patterns. They can be really good at attention to detail, so they can be really good copy editors, identifying typos and writings, or having intense interests that can be utilized in some way. Um, mhm, um, can be a strength as well. Yeah, so excellent memory. Yeah, multiple people saying excellent memory. That's
Mhm.
awesome. He can memorize a book word per word without turning the page. That is amazing. Or sensitive, right? So being in tune with how you're feeling and being aware of how other people may be feeling. That's really sweet too.
One thing I've
Uh,
seen is musicianship, or
mhm.
finding that thing that they're focused on, that they really are interested in. And because from a very young age, my son was interested in music, and he would come home and play a song that he heard on the radio for the first time. And that intense focus on music has led to a great career in music. So,
That's amazing. Yeah, I was gonna say music. So sensory sensitivities and differences can also come at um, really unique strengths, right? Noticing the details of things that most people would notice, having like perfect pitch or really good relative pitch, or being able to hear a song and play it. It's amazing. So thank you so much, everyone, for sharing that with me. Any questions about anything that I've said or that we've talked about so far before I pass it over to Michaela to kind of give you concrete strategies for behavior management?
oh, that's
Okay, good.
sweet. I have a new neighbor with a child with autism. How can I support the family and approach safely the child without making him uncomfortable? Ooh, that's a great question.
That's
And
a
I
really
love
good
the track
question.
that you're on, Marta, to help others.
Yeah, I would say find what they're interested in, and really demonstrate that you're interested in their interests. You could bring them things related to their interests or ask them questions about it, things like that. That's the thing that came to my mind. I don't know if Michelle, if you have any other ideas, or Michaela, any other ideas about that, but that's what
Mm.
came to my mind is about
I
interests.
just I love that question so much because it shows that, this person is interested in trying to help and trying to be a good neighbor and be there. I would say yes, definitely. Letting them, not maybe you're not interested in it, but if you sit and talk with them about whatever it is that they love, you're going to be their new best friend. All right, Michaela, are you ready?
I am. Well, hello, everyone. So
Hello.
I'm Michaela. So I love all the chats that we've been seeing already. And so we want to talk about behavior management skills. We already talked about autism. What we want to talk about now is how we manage the behaviors that come up with autism. Before we talk about how to manage these behaviors and how to encourage positive behaviors, we really need to talk about behaviors in general, right? And so we start with behaviors, start with the ABCs. So A is antecedent. So this is the situation or event that comes before the behavior. It triggers the behavior. So this can be anything like the event, like a telephone ring, or you take a different route to school. It can be a person. Your kid has a different teacher in their classroom. It could be an object, even. It can be a sign or a plate of cookies. Anything that cues the person to do something. And if this antecedent does not happen, the child will not engage in the behavior.
All right. B, what's the B?
The B is obviously behavior. So behavior is any action that can be described as a behavior. So brushing teeth, playing, getting dressed, anything like that. Usually when we're talking about the Usually when we're talking about the ABCs behaviors, we're looking at problem behaviors. So slapping, biting your hand, oppositional behavior, and so on. When we're talking about ABCs, we really want specific descriptions of the behavior. So instead of saying aggressive behaviors, we want to say he's hitting his brother, so that we can really be specific of what we're looking at and really so know what the antecedent is, what the behavior is, and what is the consequence, the C. So a consequence is what happens immediately after and in response to your behavior. Some are natural, so obviously you're going to burn your hand after you touch a stove. The burning the hand is the consequence. Some are learned. So if the child learns to raise your hand because of consequence, the teacher calls on her. If the behavior persists, the consequence is helping to maintain the behavior. It's making it more likely that the behavior will continue over time. Now that we know how behaviors exist, let's talk about the functions of the behavior, the motivations of the behavior, so we can learn what the child is trying to say through the behaviors. So the first one is pretty much one of the most common ones, I'd say, the escape, the avoid function. So, for example, the child learns to hit his peer in the classroom so he can be removed from the lesson. The motivation of that behavior is to escape the task that he was given. So he's hitting his peers so he can get out of whatever demand he was placed. The next one is attention. For example, the child is going to bang his head against the wall to get his dad's attention when he's talking on the phone. The behavior of hitting his head against the wall serves the function of getting his dad's attention. The next one is also probably a very common one that you guys see, getting what he wants and gaining access. So the child screams loudly when his mom turns the TV off because he's learned that she'll turn it back on to stop his screaming. He learned that he'll scream, he'll get what he wants with that behavior. Screaming gets what he wants, the TV turned back on. This next one doesn't necessarily involve another person. So this function is the self-stimulatory, automatically rewarding function. And again, our parents with kids with autism probably see this a lot. So the kiddo engages in behavior like engaging in loud noises because he likes the noise. The kiddo hums because he likes the vibration in his body. He hand flaps because he finds it pleasant to do that when he's excited. These behaviors are motivated by a lot of factors like sensory input, reducing the anxiety he's feeling in his body, or it's just pleasing to him. He's doing these behaviors because it feels good. It's automatically rewarding. Okay, so now that we talked about why these kids are doing these behaviors, let's talk about how we can reinforce behaviors we want to see. Reinforce those positive behaviors. And we can do that using reinforcers. And reinforcers are anything following a child's behaviors that increase that behavior. And they can be used to strengthen those desired behaviors and promote new behaviors and skills. So there are a lot of reinforcers, and y'all are probably very familiar with a lot of these. The first one is primary reinforcers, and they typically involve food or drink. So you can get a kid to do a lot of things by offering them candy or a snack, anything like that. The next one is social reinforcers, and this is any kind of social attention. This is a hug, a high five, praise, cuddling, anything like that, any kind of interaction like that. The next one is tangible reinforcers, and these are any kind of enjoyable item, toys, prizes, teddy bears, anything they can hold and interact with. The next one is activities of privileges, and these are reinforcing activities of privileges, ones that the kiddo wants to interact with, like going to the park, riding bikes, one-on-one time, watching TV, using the iPad, those kinds of things. And then the last one is tokens. So the tokens themselves don't have actual value, but they gain value by providing a system for the child to purchase reinforcers. So they can purchase a primary reinforcer, or they can purchase social, purchase a tangible, etc. So they can purchase a snack, they can purchase a toy, they can purchase going to a park, and so on. So you can create your own token economy and have the kiddo earn these reinforcers. So there are some tips on how to implement reinforcement within your day-to-day lives, such as using natural reinforcement whenever possible. So for instance, if you already use a bedtime story as a routine in your family, that can become a natural reinforcer. So for a natural reinforcer for getting to bed on time. So for instance, if your child is fighting going to bed and does not want to go to bed, throwing a tantrum, if you say, oh, well, you can read a bedtime story, you can choose a book you want, that can be a built-in reinforcement where the child is motivated to read the book, the child will be motivated to go to bed. That's natural reinforcement. Another thing that's brought up a lot with parents is, isn't reinforcement just bribery? And it sounds like it. It could be. It could be. There is a difference. If you offer the reinforcement before the problem behavior, it's more effective. So offer the reinforcement contingent on the desired behavior instead of offering the reinforcer after the child has started engaging in the problem behavior. So for instance, if you want the child to pick up the toys, say, oh, you'll get iPad time if you pick up the toys. But if the child has already started whining and crying and you make that offer, it's not as powerful. The child still has some control. It's bribery. So reinforcers are more effective when the reinforcer is offered up front instead of negotiated after the fact.
So in your example of the bedtime routine, you might say, go on and go get ready for bed so that we can read your book in front of, hopefully, the tantrum that he doesn't want to go to bed.
Yes, hopefully. But also, like, since it is a built-in routine and it is a natural reinforcer, he will know that he will get that reinforcement. It's already built in to the routine. So it isn't like a new reinforcer. It's like not like a new thing.
Okay.
Next tip, if the reinforcer doesn't work to change the behavior, it's not a reinforcer. You're not failing. You didn't mess up. The kid just doesn't want it. It's not motivating. So try a new thing. If the kid doesn't like chips, try cookies. If the kid doesn't want a high five, is not really into social reinforcers, try tangible reinforcers. See what the kid is motivated to work for. And that's how you know what is a good reinforcer. You just kind of have to work it out and see what works best for your child. And then lastly, catch the child being good. Use your attention, like praise, hugs, or high fives to encourage behaviors you want to see again. So if your child spontaneously picking up his toys without being asked, say, oh, good job, I see you picking up your toys, high five. If your child's playing nicely with the siblings, praise that, give them a hug. Praise any behaviors you want to see more of, and he will hopefully keep doing them. Now, using everything we just talked about, we can incorporate all of that into play. Now, this is a thing parents ask me a lot about. How do I play with my kid? I don't know how to do it. It's awkward. I don't want to sit on the floor. So this is some tips of how to do that. But obviously, this is for the younger kiddos. How do we have reciprocal play with my kiddos? So play is a great opportunity to practice social skills, communication skills, and just a great way to bond with your kiddo. And with this method, this is hard to do, but let the child lead the play. And this way you can tune into your kid and provide regular social attention and reinforcement. Also, minimize the number of commands you give during the play, which is also very hard to do. But again, let the child lead and see what he does. And you can do this by trying these 6 simple steps. First, just observe. See what he's doing, see how he's playing, see how you could kind of jump in. Just see what's happening. Next, imitate. Follow and mimic his play. This shows that you're interested in being part of his play. Next, describe. Say out loud what the child's doing. This way, you're putting words to actions, and you can expand upon descriptions to promote learning skills. But be sure to match your narrative with his language skills. So if he only has like 1 word, you use 1 word. So you say dog jump, pop, pop, pop. If he's using full sentences, you use full sentences. Just match him where he's at. Next, reflect. Repeat or paraphrase what the child says. This provides immediate attention to any verbal expression, and it shows your child that you're listening to him. It also promotes language development. And you can correct his speech in a non-directive manner. So, for example, if he says, this is a red car, you can say, yeah, that's a red car. Just modeling how to say it correctly in a not harsh way. Next, promote skills. Keep an eye out for any emerging social play skills. If you notice that he's engaged in these skills spontaneously, highlight it. So example of these skills that we want to see, like requesting, sharing, taking turns, pretend play. You can say, oh, I really like that you shared that with me. You can also model or label what you're doing if you're not seeing it. So you can say, oh, I want to share this with you. Or for pretend play, you can say, oh, I want to make this car be an airplane. Woo, woo, woo. And just model what you're doing. So point it out if you see it, model it if you don't. And then lastly, praise. praise any positive behaviors you see using simple descriptive statements. And basically just like, I like the picture you're drawing. I like that you made that ball into an airplane. Just praise any positive behaviors you're seeing. Okay, and then this also parents are kind of struggle with. Usually play ends either in a tantrum or you have to have dinner or there's a fight. So it's sometimes hard to end play smoothly. So here's some tips on how to do that. If you're noticing a child becomes agitated during reciprocal play, play quietly without attending to the negative behaviors. If he continues to be agitated and doesn't calm down, quietly leave the play, letting your child know that the playtime's all done. And while you're doing this, avoid providing social attention to the child when he's agitated. Again, we want to praise the positive behaviors. Okay, so all of that was for the little ones. Obviously, you're not going to be playing with your older children and adolescents. So here's some tips on how to interact with them. So with our older children and adolescents, they tend to prefer more direct communication. If you're telling your autistic teenager, can you try to help out more around the house? They're probably not going to get that. Instead, being more direct with what you want. Please do the dishes after dinner. They are more likely to understand that, more likely to follow through with that. Nonverbal communication. Individuals on the spectrum, they tend to have fewer facial expressions, or they're making facial expressions that don't match the social contact, and they're not necessarily making eye contact. That makes neurotypical people, they might make it uncomfortable, may not understand why, and may make communication difficult. And like we were talking about with the double empathy problem. So it's very important for when having communication to connect and understand, hey, this might not be how I want to communicate, but I want to connect. So just meet them where they're at and understand that this is how they communicate. And then, like we talked about, intense interests. We know our kids with autism love to have those intense interests. That's so many kids who know every single stop on the New York subway station, and it's so great. And they may prefer to talk about that rather than talk about your day or talk about their school day. And sometimes, yes, that's hard. And you wish you could just ask about their school day and really want to know what's going on. But instead, show interest in their interests. Ask how to get from the Upper West Side to Brooklyn and engage with them that way. And you can really connect that way and really bond and show that you are a safe person and that you are their person. And that is a way you can really build that communication and build that bond. Okay, emotion regulation. This is definitely a struggle for individuals on the spectrum. And it's important for us to help them with that emotion regulation via communication. So keeping in mind using healthy, mindful communication, thinking about what you're going to say before you say it, keeping calm, not using you statements and using I statements instead. So saying I feel, I think, not saying you did this, you did that. Be careful to not raise your voice or go into sarcasm or negative comments. So as we know, individuals on the spectrum don't necessarily understand sarcasm, so they won't get that. Going to negative comments, it may cause them to shut down and not want to communicate anymore. Also, it's really important to restate what you think you heard. If they may have trouble communicating what they're thinking, what they're feeling, you say, oh, I think I heard this. They may be like, that's not what I meant. That's a better way to help them communicate effectively and get their point across. Also, don't fall into a power struggle and scream match. I mean, this doesn't work with anyone, neurotypical or neurodiverse, but especially with someone on the spectrum who is having trouble with emotional regulation, this could cause just a shutdown, temper tantrum. It probably won't end well. So just being careful to stay calm, stay regulated, and help them to do the same. And
be a safe person. Sorry, I didn't mean to skip that one.
You're good. I was like, oh no. And then yeah, at the end, be a safe person, like Dr. Garcia said. You want to be a safe person for your child, so they can come to when they need that emotional regulation, when they need that help, and not be an unsafe person. So yeah, key points. Go ahead, Dr. Garcia.
Yes. So thank you so much, Michaela, for going over all those with us. Just to wrap us up. So We know that autism impacts two major areas. So social communication, interaction, just the way you process the world around you. And that can lead to some difficulties that we've talked about today. But we know there are lots and lots of strengths to autism, right? But as we've said, if you've met one person with autism, you've only met one person with autism. So each individual is different. And when we're thinking about behavior management, we want to be as specific as possible about what is the behavior that we're trying to target, what happens before that, and what happens after that, and how can we manage those things in order to decrease negative or harmful, unhelpful behaviors and increase desirable, more pro-social behaviors. And at the end of the day, right, we can tell you about these things. And, you know, he's a 19-month-old, right? And like I've learned about these things in school, but sometimes it can be hard to actually implement them as a parent, right? So give grace to yourself. You have this knowledge, but ultimately you are the expert in your child. We can say we're experts in autism, we're experts in assessing autism, treating it, but at the end of the day, you are also an expert, and you are an expert in your child.
Yeah,
So any
I
thoughts?
love that you guys gave us some clear, distinct things that we can do starting today and direction on some of these things. I really love that so much. So please, everyone else, share any thoughts, reactions, or questions that you might have. I'll give you a few moments as I go through the rest of my slides quickly, and then we can pick up those questions before we sign off. So in the world of planning and special needs planning, we want you to think about that special needs care plan for the future. And what is that going to cost? It's important to think about how you're going to set aside enough money to be able to plan for to take care of your child after you're gone. Think about those waiver programs. I hope everybody here is on the waiting list for waivers. If your child is over 18, you should definitely be trying to get SSI benefits, which comes along with Medicaid. And then later on in life, they can get SSDI. It's hard to get SSI when your child is under 18. We can help you with all of these questions. ABLE accounts, an ABLE account and a special needs trust are two places where you can save up some money for your children and for their future. Make sure that the beneficiary designations on any money that you want to leave to your child does not go straight to them. It should go to the special needs trust to make sure and protect their benefits. And if child support is a thing in your life, which it is for so many in our community, think about the fact that child support after age 18 counts as income in the eyes of Social Security and SSI benefits. So you want that child support to go into a first-party special needs trust. We can help you understand that. Again, think about your legal needs, that special needs trust, guardianship, your will. We can refer you to attorneys. And what is going to happen after high school? Come on, get those questions in the chat box. We do have a way for you to look and see what webinars we're doing in the future. We've got them all on our website under the events tab. And if you click on this link, we would be able to send you reminders that the webinar is coming up. And then also, if you miss it, we'll still be able to get you the link for the recording and all of the slides. This is our team at Consolidated Planning Group. We are a small, independent financial planning firm that mainly serves families with special needs loved ones. That's what we do all the time. And the reason we do this is because the owners of our company, Allison and Jeff, have two loved ones, two children with disabilities. And when she was going through this, she was already a financial advisor. And Allison said, this is really difficult. And I'm a financial advisor. I should know this stuff. Why is it so difficult? So she decided there and then that our family is going to focus on making sure that parents know the steps that they need to take to ensure success for their loved ones. And then finally, I mentioned that we do offer a completely free Zoom consultation. You would probably meet with me, maybe my husband, Andy, and we would answer your questions up front. You get a chance to pick the brain of a financial planner and special needs advisor. Ask us whatever you want. And then we're going to learn a little bit about you and your family. We're going to walk through how we work as a company and what we charge. And then from there, we can determine if it would be a good idea for us to move forward together. So you can call or email me. I put my info in the chat box to schedule this Zoom, or you can call or email the office, or you can use the QR code there. And of course, all of our social medias are down here. You can click to link to our YouTube, Instagram, our podcast, and our Facebook page. So I'm going to leave this up as we get to this next question. Dr. Garcia, do you evaluate for autism in toddlers?
Yes, I do. I love seeing the littles. So I'm gonna put it in the chat as well, just so it's in writing. But I do evaluate for autism in toddlers. Um, I put the number for our front desk at 713-486-2700. And just call and say, hey. You can even provide some extra information like I saw Dr. Garcia on this webinar. And then the front desk
Yeah.
will reach out to me. So I'm aware that that referral has come in. So thank you for thinking of me. The Daniel Duncan Clinic is also great. But I'm in the Department of Psychiatry and we do autism evaluations here too.
Okay. And how
Mhm.
long is you say your waiting list is only until like October?
Yeah, well, I checked, and based on what I saw, it's less than a year for sure. And I have pretty good accessing to my scheduler. So if there are younger kids who are in need of autism evaluations, I try to get them in sooner so they can get the services that they need.
That is fantastic. And don't forget, everybody, that when you're signing, if you have an inkling that there might be some kind of neurodiversity in your child, get them on the waiver waiting list as soon as possible. This wait can be up to 20 years for some of these really helpful programs, but they don't check to see if you qualify until your name comes up on the list. So if you sign up on the list before you have a diagnosis, that is okay. You just find out later whether or not you need the services, and then you have the ability to say yes or no, hopefully a little bit sooner than you would have otherwise. Any other questions or comments for Amy and Michaela today?
I do want to
Wow.
say too, I also see a lot of parents of their kid was diagnosed with autism and they may also wonder if they are autistic too. So if you're ever interested in that, just shoot me an email as well. I'll put it in the chat just so you have it copy and pastable, but I know it'll be on the slides as well. But thank you, Melody, for
That is
coming in for your
perfect.
question.
Thank you, everybody, so much for being here, especially for the two presenters. You have opened some eyes and given some fantastic information. And like I said, things that we can truly use right now to help our families. So I really appreciate you. And thank you to all of the participants for joining us today. If you have any further questions, you can certainly reach out to me or to my office. And I know that Dr. Garcia is ready to help you too. You can get on her schedule or email her for help. I really appreciate you all taking the time to be here with us today. I hope you have a fantastic afternoon and an even greater week, and that we hear from you soon. Bye, everybody.